for joining us again. And thank you also for your stories and your fresh light on economics and what you can do from different perspectives. What is very trending or hot right now are these new frameworks like ESG and CSRD, yes, that are heading our way to increase control and responsibilities in the economy. And for some, this is the beginning of a new green wave, and others are concerned. If they are concerned, it might be the next edition of checklist sustainability and incrementalism. And yeah, I'm so curious to hear what your stand on this is. What is your stand on this? Can I maybe start with, I don't know, let's give Francesca a break, shall we? Maybe we'll start with you, Peter.
I think it's a complex but interesting debate. I think you need regulations to spark these things, but I think in the end there's money to be made from sustainability. I think sustainability or sustainable capitalism, I think it's possible. So I think that trigger is necessary. I understand that if everybody talks about the extremes of the world and capitalism and we're all going for growth, I think we might have to redefine what growth is. Is it just money? Maybe not.
Yeah.
So I like the spark. I think it's necessary, but I think the movement's already started. So I'm not that concerned about the risks about it and concerning about it. Government ultimately has to let go.
Yeah.
But it will. It sparked. It started. So.
Okay, we're going to talk about growth later, which is a touchy subject. Maybe Michel, you have your ideas?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a huge risk for regulated greenwashing. We have seen that in the past. All sorts of regulatory frameworks, such as the SDGs, or we had the MDGs, but the outcomes aren't actually making the economy better. You've seen right now the climatological disasters accelerating, the biodiversity collapse, it's accelerating, the poverty and equality crisis is accelerating despite all these nice frameworks. So there's a huge risk for regulated greenwashing. And what's the solution to that is that it's not just about information. Information is a necessary requirement. Definitions, methods, data. However, you have to have mindset, the setting of the mind, which starts with education, which starts with literacy. The complete economy exists of impact illiterate people. We are super good at counting money, but we are illiterate when it comes to counting value. If you get all sorts of regulatory requirements, obviously it will lead to regulated greenwashing, and there may be a little bit better outcomes, but we have the wind in our sails and the stream against us, and we go backwards. We have to be so much more ambitious. And just to finalize, and I know I'm taking a lot of space, but in these European frameworks, it's unfortunately there is the French make kind of chemical and the manufacturers, the German car industries, they are lobbying against it. They are watering down the good intentions that are into these regulations. We now see it with the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where biodiversity improvement plans are no longer mandatory but are voluntary, where carbon disclosures are dependent on materiality. And the definition of materiality is really super, super soft. This is just to illustrate that we are not there yet. Despite these words, we have to really take action.
Okay, Francesca, I can see that you want to respond on that.
No, not really. No, I think they said everything about the topic. I mean, I just want to say, not bashing against regulation. I don't think this is the right approach. I mean, I think we should be bashing against the lobbying, against the right regulation, because working in politics for many years, that's what's the problem. I mean, and I saw it happening a lot of time, where you start with good legislative proposals and intentions, and you end up with a very diluted framework. I mean, like the, kind of financial regulation regarding sustainability, where now we have gas, we have, a lot of things that are not supposed to be in there. So I agree about that. And I think we should limit also as people the accountability of the regulatory bodies. But I do think we need regulation. So we need to have laws, because laws are binding. And then we need standards, we need data, we need approaches and frameworks, but then we need binding regulatory approaches. And this is true for the climate emergency and sustainability, and this is true for artificial intelligence. I mean, the big problems we are facing, we need accountable regulation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Here at Tomorrowland, we love thought experiments. Yeah, thinking of bold, crazy things, but that open our minds and maybe some interesting thoughts are to be shared. So just imagine that one day you go to a supermarket or you look at an advertising screen with a VR set, maybe, and all possible societal and ecological impacts of every product you can imagine are revealed in a clear, insightful, and organized manner. In other words, what if our economy becomes radically transparent? What would be the consequences for companies, enterprises, but also for our behavior?
I think it's fantastic. I think the idea that a business would see in real time every decision they make, the impact that it has on the ecology. I think topping from that, the investors then know what companies and what they're investing in. Consumers themselves would immediately see if they buy a product or take a step. So I think inevitably it's a fantastic idea. But we should also think about the Black Mirror nosedive episode where you have like the social score above your head. There is a dark side to this as well. So we'll have to be careful to go all that way, whereas it doesn't become a polarization between the two of us, like you are better than me. But I think ultimately this transparency would guide you better, because face it, today you're reading like these articles of what is good, what is bad, what is impacting it. And also in terms of carbon footprinting, all the information that we get, is it real? Is it genuine? Like, aren't we already dark red in terms of our footprint here in Western Europe? So I think baby steps need to be taken, and I think super transparency can help in that respect. But I think we're back to the topic of lobbying. We should dig out the lobbying to get this transparency into place as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what we need is a carrot and a stick. If you combine the two, you have a sticky carrot. Of like in Dutch you say, a wortel om mee te slaan. You have to have both in one. Otherwise, it may be perfectly transparent, as we see with the IPCC reports. We can make libraries of reports about all the crises and not much happens. We have to have incentives as well. Meaning, in the case of, well, unsustainability, fiscal punishment. Why don't we subtract the societal cost from the profits before you pay out dividends to your shareholders? That's a perfect incentive that is fair to those companies, and there are many companies like the ones you're representing that want to take a leadership position, but they are punished because they are more expensive than their competitors that don't give a shit, right? So we have to have incentives like fiscal incentives, but also just prices. Why don't we make mandatory the true price of stuff? I mean, ultimately, it will lead to internalizing those costs because there's an incentive to do it well in the first place.
I think this is a very good approach, and if you look at the extra profits, for example, done by energy companies during the crisis, they are like massive. And obviously, if we want to redistribute this money in the real economy, but also invest it in green infrastructures and decarbonization and so on, we need to tax this extra profits. So I think this is a very good example. As economists, we talk a bit too little about redistribution of wealth, and I think it's not only polarization, but redistribution is a very big problem. And I would turn this scenario on the other way around, because I think today we have mass transparency for all of us, meaning the surveillance capitalism of Shoshana Zuboff. We are tracked, we are monitored, the companies know what we do all the time, so massive transparency for all and very opaque for the powerful. So why don't we do transparency for corporations and the powerful, and more protection for privacy and data fundamental rights for people? So we turn it around, yeah.
Just a question from curiosity. Will European legislation accelerate this new balance a bit, you think?
I mean, regulation alone, as we all said, no. But if we actually make regulation real, yes. Because, I mean, also one attempt to the regulation is to make, these big, for example, tech companies less powerful because they are too powerful, and we have seen it with the banking crisis. You work in bank. When they are too powerful, they are too big to regulate. They are too big to save. And we are in a moment where these companies are too big to regulate and too big to fail. So obviously we need to do something about it. And I think also if we want that this opportunity for sustainability and digitization is for all of us, we do need to break part of this power. So we need regulation, yes. Yeah. So Europe is doing that well. Coupling that with innovation would be better.
Okay. Interesting. Guys, I have another thought experiment for you, and this might be one that is a bit bolder. Imagine we can install a new society with a new economy on an, let's say, uninhabited island for, let's say, 300,000 people, with the scale of the city of Ghent, let's say, from scratch. So it's not a scenario of Mars from scratch, but a new society on an island from scratch, yeah? What would be the building blocks, conditions, and requirements so this economy is future-proof, fosters equality, fairness, and doesn't erode its environment? How to make this flourish, and not only for today, but also for the long haul? Can you come up with building blocks that you think of?
I think to start off, a sustainable infrastructure. So housing, circular housing, energy fully sustainable. I think sustainable agriculture. And I think really start from the core there. Localization, producing everything local. I think very clear fundamentals to create our island from scratch. So I think the guidance we're trying to implement here start from that guidance from the start.
Yeah. So we start with bricks and mortar. It won't
Built
be bricks
environment.
and mortar. It will be
bricks
different
and mortar.
materials.
You'll be able to
okay.
reuse it soon.
Okay. So anything else?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest elephant ever imagined in the room is the accounting system, the things that we count. In the economy, we have a very, let's say, black spot for impacts. We don't account for the impacts. Impacts are not included on the balance sheet. That is not neutral. There's a protocol for this, designed by capital markets. In the IFRS Foundation, there's actually books that stipulate with commissions, with governance, everything around it, worldwide accepted, regulated, that basically, defines this is property. If you have brand value, you have to attribute, X amount of money to it, and then you can, activate this. This is a construct. It's a kind of a social construct taught in MBAs, in accounting universities. We need to break this open. This is the cement in the economy. When you talk about building and bricks, if we don't adjust this, we keep on focusing on the finance, and the sustainability or impact part will only be nice to have. So we have to break this open and indeed challenge the power, right? It's not something that is in the public, that this is not a neutral kind of protocol, and that this protocol should be much more open, much more transparent, and that should also include social and environmental and human values.
So some more building blocks. So I think one building block is again taxing the corporation, maybe even like a 30% tax to big tech platforms to pay where they produce value. So where we give them the data and not, in offshore places. Then a universal basic income for everyone. Also because, we are exploited in labor standards and we need to rethink the world of labor. So basic income would be great. Then participatory democracy everywhere. So people have more power to decide and take decisions and then give data back to the people. So the data we produce is our data. So cryptography, data back to the people. And if we install a digital euro, we should be controlling that and not only the big banks.
Yeah.
I would say Francesca for president.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. When you were mentioning a building block, I was thinking, oh my God, this is accountancy 2.0, but you come up with an entire new society. Brings me to a question, and this is another elephant in the room. This new society, new economy, will it be a growth model, a beyond growth model, or something else?
Define growth. Define growth.
Okay.
Is it just money? No. Define growth in your personal lifestyle. What's growth for you? Is it just money, more money in the bank account?
It could be financially, but growth can also be
No, I mean,
personal achievement,
Exactly.
something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, my approach is obviously what also I said in the talk. So we are at a point where we are breaching the planetary boundaries. So the question of growth is more linked to material extraction, to to consumption of resources, and to the fact that basically we got to a tipping point, many different tipping points, and we have a massive planetary crisis. So it has to be a beyond growth model. And I think we should define what that is and what is the financial, of course, model that goes with it. But I think there is no doubt, because the planet is telling us that there is no doubt that it has to be a beyond growth model. So fossil fuel is over. And I mean, we should realize it, yes, because it's us that is going to make this change possible. So if it's a fossil fuel driven world is over, we have to decarbonize and make this other system possible. And I think growth in terms of extraction of materials, if you look at, raw material, the ones that we need for the solar panel, for decarbonization, nickel, lithium, cobalt, we are in a massive planetary crisis and also geopolitical instability. So if we don't take this seriously, I think we're going to be, we're gonna be. We're not gonna be.
We are already fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, like in the Dutch language, you would say van groei naar bloei, like a flower or a tree or an ecosystem, right? It's flourishing. In business terms, you could consider. Yeah, I've looked into what is words for this, but for example, profit and prosperity, from profit to prosperity. We need to prosper or thrive, and we need to kind of find the language and having the underlying language and methods to make this the new normal. And we need to start with the economics books that we teach to high school children. That's where it starts. And when we have obsolete frameworks taught to billions of children around the world, there will never be a sustainable tomorrow.
Yeah. I like this metaphor of growth versus flourishing, let's say, because that really depicts what the difference is. However, some people in the debate argue that we need growth, economical growth, as a sort of power engine to tackle all these big, huge challenges we face, these big 21st century challenges, and we need to tackle them fast. So yeah, growth, economical growth is the only engine we know that is so powerful to come up with this new waves of innovation and so on. What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the easiest role in a company is to be the degrowth manager. Just let your company go bankrupt, right? You are very successful as a degrowth manager if you make your company bankrupt. So degrowth in a conventional, institution, in a conventional system isn't really making sense. So we have to indeed redefine first what we mean with growth or flourishing, and then have a regenerative operation.
And maybe one proposal, we can limit the possibilities for companies to do share buybacks, because that's how they're making a lot of money, buying their own shares. This is the practice that the companies are making to increase their market value, which is very disruptive to the system. And then why don't we align all the sustainability targets with compensation of executives? I mean, I'm trying to do that in the fund, and we are really far away from that. You know what I mean? But if we align more those kind of targets with the way we remunerate talent, and we remunerate in particular top executives, I think it will be ideal. So we can invest, but we invest in the right place.
Yeah, it's all about incentives. I agree.
Okay, guys. When we think about climate change and biodiversity, we can say time is a little bit against us. also in this track, because our time is almost over, I have maybe one more question for the three of you. Would traditional companies who are not taking this green wave, will they still make a profit in the next 10 years?
I think Francesca made a comment, some companies are too big to fail. I don't believe it. I think if you just look at Google and what's happening now with AI, there's a big crisis going on with Google. What's this new technology about? So I think there as well, no company is too big to fail.
And I just hope it's not going to be failing the small companies, the small businesses, because that's more my worry. I think what we have to do is invest also in training, in skills, in getting like our economy, which is actually smaller companies on board, you know, because I believe, yes, everyone will have to change. And Europe, if you look at our core businesses, we are really risking to become development world very soon if we do not change. So I believe it's imperative, but we have to accompany it. So we have to invest in training, in education, invest, you know, in the skills of the workers and so on, because otherwise we are not going to make it.
Yeah, I'm not going to hope wash my last words. I have not much hope in the time span of 10 years. I'm sorry. I think we need to step up. All of you need to step up and really do what you can. If we don't have true prices or really adjusted measures of what is success, it won't be green in 10 years. And what we see now, kind of record profits for the most polluting companies, will be common practice in 10 years from now if we don't step up. So sorry for not hope washing, sorry for being realistic and just looking at the facts. We really need to step up. So, you know, make it better tomorrow and raise the bar, you know, flourish.
Okay. Okay, guys, Francesca, Peter, Michel, I want to thank you for your perspectives and your energy. Give them a warm hand.
Thank you.
I guess most of you will be hungry. Yeah? We'll see you after dinner in the main Freedom stage. Thanks for your attention and see you again. Bye.
Thanks.